What's the creepiest thing you've ever witnessed? I was the sole witness to a murder. I've told this story before. I was in a Jeep with the top down, waiting for two guys on the sidewalk to stop arguing. One guy pulls a shank out of his sock and stuffs it, stiff-armed, into the other guy's eye. The crunch was sickening. He took off. I ran up, blood was spurting out of the dude's face onto the sidewalk in spurts. Long story short, dead by the time the ambulance showed up. I was going to testify in court but the other dude pleaded guilty and got 20-ish years I believe. It was a long time ago. Not long enough for me to forget that sound though. Frown. At the start of this year there was an article in our local newspaper about a school director and former teacher that was accused of sharing and uploading child porn, rape and child abuse. 2 days later my mom calls because it was my former teacher and choirmaster and she had received a call from the police, asking for my contact info to question me. Before that, I talked to a friend about potential victims because we both have known that person and were active singers. I tell the police the names of the suspected victims by phone and get invited some weeks later to make a statement, because our fears were actually true and one actually was a victim. They asked about a suspected time span, because the person's age was still in the range of abuse of a minor, which is way harder than only child abuse in our law. I wanted to vomit. But that shit doesn't stop there. About a month later I talked to my parents about that and they mentioned that it has become more or less public knowledge that he used narcotics and there are probably a lot more victims. After swallowing that pill, I remembered that I slept in a room with that guy when I was in primary school and we were on a trip with our choir. I have almost no memories of that trip. I don't know what happened. All I know is that my mind is fucked up since I thought about that. And to top it off, the choir was Catholic and the church didn't do a f-king thing about it. Damn. Edit. A lot of people expressed concern about my health, so I want to clear things up a bit. First, thanks to everyone who gave tips, helpful comments, etc. I really appreciate it. Second, I want to say that I am doing fine. I got my friends and family who support me and a good psychologist to talk to. I don't think about what if a lot and continue living my life. There is nothing I can do about it anyway, other than supporting my friends who are suffering from it. Went to bed in a hotel room with the balcony door open because it was hot. Had a bad dream of a guy in a red checked shirt peering into the room, entering, and eating an ice cream at the end of the bed. When I woke up I discovered a half-melted banana-colored ice cream between the bed and the wall. This is a bit of a different take on creepy. When I was about 12, I accidentally went off-piste on a ski run and got a bit lost. I found myself on a flat expanse. I skied in the direction of a massive board that I assumed was a sign, offering directions, but the lettering was on the other side. When I got around to face it, it was a danger sign warning people not to go near the lake due to thin ice. This is Australia, it's not cold enough to produce reliable ice. I realized I could have simply disappeared and perhaps no one would ever have found out what happened to me. I was a kid and it was Christmas Day and there was a knock on our front door. Expecting it to be family, my dad and I opened the door together and there was an old man standing there who was asking for directions to the train station. Our house was smack bang in the middle of suburbia so he must have been walking in the wrong direction for hours. My dad gave him the directions and offered to drive him but he declined, and thanked us. As he was leaving he looked down at me and said something really strange. "Never go to that place that scares you." This man was really old and walked at a shuffling pace. Shrugging off his comment as well-intentioned senility, I went back to the living room. As he was walking down our path it started to rain. My dad went to get an umbrella from under the stairs to give to him and when he went back outside the man was gone. My dad ran down the path and up and down the street trying to find him, but he was nowhere to be seen. The place I was scared of was this shack in the woods I used to walk past on my way to and from school. Always gave me a bad feeling. A few years later, someone was arrested for murdering a child there. I once worked as a server in a strip club. One member would pay me $20 plus to make an origami frog then step on it. I thought at first it was just weird but then I learned about the crush fetish. Being a kid witnessing my dad going through alcohol withdrawals. He would hold long conversations by himself as if he was talking to someone on the phone and he would see things that weren't there. He then took my bike for a ride and fell over and had a seizure. I was too scared to do anything but someone came to help and he went to the hospital for a week. Driving on the interstate late at night. Road was decently foggy so visibility was somewhat reduced. In this distance there was a light waving back and forth through the fog in the middle of the road, slowly getting more pronounced as I got closer. I got close enough to then see that it was a guy waving his phone flashlight to alert oncoming traffic. Right in the area past him was 2 cars that had just crashed, and bodies all over the road. No first responders there yet or anything. Just carnage and a man flashing a light. I work as a dog walker. We had a client who was an extremely rich and well-known coin collector that lived alone with his dog and had a bit of an alcohol problem. Really nice guy, just smelled like booze and was very disheveled every morning when we'd pick his dog up to walk her. One Monday morning I walk into his huge house and it looks like he's asleep on the couch as he normally is, so I called his name to wake him up. I realized he's half on his couch and in a really weird position. He wasn't waking up, so eventually I walk over to him and his eyes are wide open, blood coming out of his nose and mouth, and his hands are turning black and blue. Threw up on his patio and called 911. They said he'd been dead since Friday. He lived there alone and didn't have friends or family nearby, so I was the one that found him. Really sad, as he was very nice and not very old. But yeah, I still have nightmares of that wide open mouth and eyes with blood covering his face. Not a spooky ghost story, but the creepiest thing I've ever seen was working my college job. I look a lot younger than my age in general. A 50-year-old man was intently set on talking to me and getting up real close to me while he did so. That alone made me incredibly uncomfortable. Then he asked, "By the way, how old are you?" When I said 24, he looked at me with an absolutely disgusted look on his face and said, "Oh, I thought you were way younger than that." To this day I am creeped out by that single comment. It's not something that I witnessed, but something that happened to me. I have schizophrenia and I delusionally believed that I was pregnant, had morning nausea, no vomiting, abdominal distension, and several other symptoms of pregnancy. I felt the baby kicking. It happened multiple times and a gynecologist said that nothing was wrong with me physically.